Hello, everybody. Could farmers take down the Starmer regime in the UK? Now, there are big protests planned for Tuesday, the 19th of November, to protest against the measures which the Starmer regime's chancellor, what's her name? Rachel Reeves, often called Rachel Thieves, colloquially, because they are stealing from workers and businesses and farmers, and particularly the odious increase in inheritance tax and the imposition on farms who pass down agricultural land from generation to generation is now going to be taxed, meaning that farmers will have to sell their farms in order to pay inheritance tax because they don't have liquid assets like a lot of people who are passed down shares and business assets and so on and trinkets. This is real agricultural land which farmers use to farm the land and produce food for us all to eat. The Labour government doesn't seem to realize that if you tax this and you start a war on farmers, they're going to produce less food, which means that we're all going to potentially go hungry because we're already not self-sufficient in food. We should be 100% self-sufficient in food, but our food self-sufficiency is something like 56%. We import 44% of our food from overseas. Well, this needs to increase because every nation should aim to produce all their own food so that people don't go hungry. Now, we're very lucky at the moment, from things that have been put in place, that we don't have famines. Famines have really, they're not something that we have in our experience in Western nations in our lifetime. They used to be 200 years ago, 300 years ago, there still are famines in other parts of the world, like Ethiopia and so on, but they're not something that we have any living memory of in Western Europe or North America whatsoever. So if there is a food shortage, then people are going to go absolutely crazy. And we want to avoid that at all costs. So I completely 100% support farmers who are going to protest against the measures that this absolutely dreadful government has put in place, which is going to demolish the economic viability of farms and make food security much, much worse in this country. They are an absolute disaster. I don't think that they're doing it this is not just incompetence. They're not doing it. This is not a cock up. I think this is deliberate because farms are being attacked to raise what? 520 million pounds a year, but they're spaffing, excuse me for using this language, but they're spaffing 3 billion pounds out the door every year on Ukraine and another 3 billion on migrant hotels. Now, you could just take 1/6 of that money, which you're sending to Ukraine, and then not tax the farmers so they can pass on land from generation to generation like they always have done. So when she says that we need this money, for whatever, it's a lie. It's a lie. They don't need that money. They can stop sending money to Ukraine. They can stop 12 billion pounds they're sending to abroad, not to net zero. Net zero is nonsense, but they're not this is not for net zero in this country. They're sending 12 billion pounds to other countries to implement net zero. 1/20th of that money could be used to not tax farmers' inheritance tax. Is absolutely deplorable what they're doing. And they're doing it because they want to take farmers' land and put solar panels and wind turbines on them so that the wind barons and the solar barons and, all the people that are involved in the scam can get more money. That's what it's all about. Now, look, I hear that on the day things might get a little feisty. I am not, calling for any feistiness. I support peaceful protest. I don't support blocking things. But you wonder, if this does get to the stage where, out of desperation, and it's not just farmers, it's small businesses of all kinds are being hammered by this Labour government, which, the Labour is supposed to support workers, but by hammering small businesses, workers are going to find themselves out of a job. They're anti-worker because they're anti-business and they're anti-farm. They're absolutely deplorable. But I hear that some people might escalate this, and there might be some blockages of ports and food distribution centers and so on. I am not condoning that or calling for that at all. But you may remember back in 2000, there were similar protests. Lorry drivers blocked ports, they blocked refineries to protest against the huge increase in fuel duty. When Gordon Brown was the Chancellor, Tony Blair was the Prime Minister, they put in place something called a fuel duty escalator, which meant the price of petrol and diesel was going up way above inflation every year. And back in the year 2000, it reached over £1 a litre. Now, of course, it's more than that now, but because of inflation, £1 a litre in the year 2000 would be the equivalent of more than £2 a litre today. That's how expensive petrol got back then because of government policy, tax policy. And of course, that disproportionately affected lorry drivers and farmers, of course, as well, who need to diesel to operate their tractors and machinery. And so there were big protests in the year 2000, and they actually forced the government of the day to climb down and to stop what they called the fuel duty escalator, and reduce the price of petrol and diesel back in those days. I wonder if something similar is going to happen this year, because there is such absolute outrage over what the Labour Party is doing in terms of hammering ordinary people for a little bit of extra tax, which, as I said, they're just pouring it down the drain uh, in things which are completely unnecessary and don't benefit ordinary British people at all. So I wonder if the protests on the 19th of not October, the 19th of November are going to be the beginning of the end of the Starmer regime. They're dreadful. They need to be gone. And I hope that something does get rid of them, because we can't really handle them for another 4.5 years. Peacefully, of course. Thanks for listening, everyone.